Everybody, it's time to talk Kentucky on the Longhorn Confidential podcast. So had to bring in an expert. So we got Jon Hale of the Lexington Herald-Leader. He's been on the Kentucky beat since I think 2011. Did I read that right, John?
That is correct. Yeah.
Awesome. You could read his work at Kentucky.com, which I think is the best website. I don't know how y'all got that website name, but that's a great website to have. You're on the Kentucky beat. And then obviously on Twitter at @JonHale_HL. John, how are things in Lexington right now?
Perfect weather at the moment. We'll see if that holds for the game this weekend, but so far so good.
Awesome. John, I was thinking about my first year on the beat. It was 2016, and Texas went up to Kansas to play a game that they infamously lost. And I remember being in the press box during that game, and even though Kansas was about to win this game, at one point during the game, Bill Self walks into the press box, and all the Kansas beat writers just get up and go sprint to go talk to him because it was basketball season up in Kansas. So obviously, Kentucky is a basketball town. That's a campus. It's very proud of its program. I'm kind of wondering with the Wildcats kind of off to a slow start. Have people tuned out? Are they already, focused on basketball? Is there going to be a good crowd this weekend? I know they haven't been at home for a while, but what's kind of the appetite for football right now in Lexington?
Yeah, it's a rough spot for them, definitely in football right now. I mean, in general, that's always a risk around this time, shifting to basketball. They had their Big Blue Madness, Midnight Madness thing over the weekend, so it's officially here. I think they play number one Purdue in an exhibition game next week. Their blue-white scrimmage is this Friday, the day before the football game. So certainly people have shifted that focus. But I think the bigger issue is there is just this general sense of fatigue and unhappiness with the football program where it's at. Mark Stoops is their all-time winningest coach, but the last 3 years have not been nearly as good. They had the hype was raising for them going into 2022 and 2023. They went to bowls both those years, but did not come close to breaching the hype that kind of met them in the summer. Then last year it collapsed. They went 4-8. Now they're apparently on their way to another losing season. A lot of people want Mark Stoops fired, but there's also this acknowledgement that his buyout's right around $38 million due within 60 days of him being fired. That's just cost prohibitive in this current college sports landscape. So every week I do this mailbag on Monday, and all the questions right now are about how can they fire Mark Stoops? How can they move on from this? So that combined with basketball starting certainly has put the football fan base in a weird spot. That being said, it's October in Lexington, which means Keeneland is in session. Pretty much all of their October home games at night get good crowds because you can go to Keeneland during the day and then go to football at night. The weather may or may not cooperate this weekend, but with Texas coming here for the first time ever, I think it's going to still be a fine crowd.
Well, going up that, Kentucky just a few seasons ago, I guess it was 2021, they went 10-3, won the Citrus Bowl, went to a couple bowl games a couple years after that. Why just has it not worked these last couple of years? Is Mark's message not getting through? Is recruiting falling off? Are they just lagging behind in NIL? Or is it just 2 bad years in the SEC, which kind of can happen from time to time?
Yeah, I mean, they won 10 games in 2018 and 2021. They had not done that since 1977 before that. Some of that, they definitely benefited from the old SEC East being down a little bit before the divisions went away. That certainly helped. They went to bowl games in 8 straight years, though. I think that was the second longest streak in the country, active at the time, before last season. It certainly started the downturn around the time that NIL and the transfer portal and all of that went into effect. I think I talked to Mitch Barnhart, their athletic director, yesterday about a bunch of this stuff, and he acknowledged they did not handle that transition very well. Kentucky was a program when it was good under Mark Stoops that really prided itself on taking some underheralded recruits, the Benny Snells, the Josh Allen, Tynes Allens of the world, who were not really thought of as big blue chip guys, and they developed them over 3 or 4 years. That's harder to do in an era where players can just transfer immediately and are not going to sit and wait their turn. Certainly with NIL, I think they got in a spot the last 2 or 3 years where they were desperate to keep their best players who were talented and probably created some locker room dynamics that weren't great because of those decisions. That certainly was the case last year. We heard that on the record from multiple players that the locker room, there was a problem, a culture problem, a lot of that coming from NIL. They hoped that revenue sharing would really help them because it would kind of even the playing field with all the other schools. But their transfer class was so big this offseason, they needed so many holes to fill that it was probably never realistic that they were going to hit on all of those transfers. And it's been kind of a mixed bag. So Mark Stoops would tell you that they figured things out, that they're getting better, that the roster's better, that they're building around a young quarterback who Cutter Boley maybe impressed in the second half at Texas last year. That was kind of his coming out party. But to date, the results still aren't good. The offense has been terrible, and now the defense is also ranked outside the top 100 in yards allowed. That's a pretty bad combination.
You recently wrote on the fabulously named Kentucky.com a story about kind of, hey, here's a couple reasons why, there may be some optimism for the second half of the season. Don't completely check out, Kentucky fans and start focusing all on basketball. What's maybe like the top reason you think that, hey, maybe something could happen for this Kentucky team over these next few weeks?
Yeah, I mean, if anything good happens, it's going to be because of Cutter Bowley. So he was a 5-star guy originally when he was in the high school class of 2026, and he reclassified, 25, and he reclassified to 24, came a year early. Eventually, I think landed as a 4-star kid, local from Lexington Catholic High School in town. Was signed by Bush Hamden, who is now the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So clearly had his vote of confidence in there. And then last year, it was supposed to be a redshirt year. This year was also supposed to be a developmental year. The plan was always 2 years and then be ready to start in 2026. But because they struggled so much last year, he got chances down the stretch. They put him in the second half of that Texas game. He looked really, really well. He looked really good. This year, they signed Zach Calzada, former A&M quarterback, who was an incarnate word the last 2 years, to be the starter. He struggled a lot in the first 2 games and then got hurt, and they really had no other option but to put Cutter Bowley out there. He looked okay. He looked good in the first start against Eastern Michigan, but the competition was terrible. He looked really bad at South Carolina, but showed some strides at Georgia before their bye week. Like they still only scored 14 points. It wasn't a great performance, but he looked much better than the week before. So if you want to have hope, he's learning on the job, getting more comfortable, and maybe they can find something to build around with him down the stretch.
About that, Kentucky is 0-3 in SEC play, but as you mentioned, their best game against Ole Miss, Cutter was not the quarterback. And then, some struggles getting in there against South Carolina, and Georgia played a little bit better. What did you learn about the Wildcats in those conference games? Is there a game that they're more indicative of their actual skill set, or is it just you can't really tell, and this is something we're gonna have to figure out as we go this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably Georgia is the best indication so far because they're probably not quite as bad as they looked against South Carolina, but probably also not as good as they looked at times against Ole Miss. The quarterback play was not kept them in that game at Ole Miss. Zach Calzada was pretty bad in that game too. They have an identity this year in a way they never did last year because the offensive line is at least improved in run blocking, and their running back Seth McGowan, who started at Oklahoma, got kicked off the team there and has kind of been through the hinterlands of college football until he landed here this year. He is a very good player and has been very good when healthy. He got banged up against Georgia. We'll see what his status is this week. But they can build the offense around him in a way they never had anything to rely on last year. And so at their best, they're a team that runs the ball, limits the opponent's possessions, dominates, time of possession, and kind of helps the defense out that way. They need a passing game attack to be just competent enough, though, to keep defenses honest, and it hasn't been so far. Their wide receivers have been really bad, which maybe should not be a shock based on the fact that their passing game was so bad last year. You were not going to get top receiver transfers to come in and fill those holes, but maybe at least one freshman kind of emerged down the stretch at Georgia. They're going to play another one this week. Maybe some young guys can help there. I don't think this is a team, though, where you can count on them to score more than 17 points in a game. Like, that's just what they've been the last 2 years, which puts your defense in such a terrible position with such a small, thin margin for error. And now the defense has started stumbling, too. So maybe the defense is better than they were the last 2 weeks, but the offense, there's just no real indication that it's a team that can score even in the high 20s to win games right now.
And Seth McGowan, he's clearly the Wildcat to know on offense. Who's kind of a name on defense that Texas fans should be looking out for this weekend?
Yeah, the interesting one to watch for Kentucky this weekend is DJ Waller, their cornerback. They've had a lot of success putting DBs, especially corners, in the NFL in recent years. Maxwell Hairston was a first-round pick last year for them. Carrington Valentine started for the Packers for a year as a rookie, as a 6th-round pick. Andre Phillips was I think a 2nd-round pick for the Giants recently. So they have had a lot of success there. And DJ Waller was supposed to be the next step in that. He started his career at Michigan, played for a national championship team as a true freshman, then transferred here to Kentucky. He played in the opener and then has missed the last 4 games with injury. He should be back this week. which hopefully for their hope is that helps a lot with some of the perimeter issues they've had in those last couple of games on defense. So if he's healthy and is the guy they thought he was going into the season, that can make a big difference for this defense moving forward.
And before I get you out of here, excuse me. This is a night game this weekend, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. back in Austin if you're watching on ESPN. For the Texas fans who've never been in Lexington, which is all of them, since Texas has never traveled to Lexington before. You're a UK grad. You've obviously worked in the city for a while. What is like something you'd recommend for Texas fans to do during the day to kind of kill time before that 7 p.m. kickoff?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you're in Lexington in October on a weekend, it's go to Keeneland. So the racetrack, their fall meet is in session right now. It's probably the most beautiful horse racing track in the country. Like Churchill Downs gets all the attention because of the Derby, but Keeneland, like true horse racing people will tell you that Keeneland is like the heart of horse racing. So their fall meet's in session. That's why Kentucky, all of their October home games are generally at night. So you can do the double where you will go to Keeneland, watch the races during the day, and they actually run shuttles between the racetrack and the football stadium. So if you want the true Central Kentucky experience, on Saturday you will be at Keeneland during the day and then hop over to Kroger Field to tailgate just in time for the game at night.
Well, as Jon Hale, the Lexington Herald-Leader. You can follow him on Twitter at Jon_HL, Kentucky.com for all of his work. Jon, we really appreciate it. We're going to see you out at Kroger Field this weekend, and we appreciate your time today.
Thanks for having me.